My personality is inherently very introverted, and ever since I was a child, I never talked very much. Especially when in front of people, I got so nervous that I couldn't say anything. Compared with other children of a similar age, my reactions were slower and my brain was less nimble. My parents, relatives, and friends always scolded me, saying that I wouldn't speak in front of others. They also said that in society today, if you can't speak, you won't eat. Strong arms and steady legs are no match for a silver tongue. My younger cousin was more honey-tongued than me. Everyone praised how well she talked, and they all liked her. I felt very inferior, like I was in every aspect not as good as others, and I wasn't quick-witted. I hated myself. Why couldn't I be as good at talking as others? I was too stupid, and my ability to express myself was too poor. I always felt like I was a grade below others, and became more and more introverted. In May 2012, I accepted God's work of the last days. Through eating and drinking the words of God, I realized that God likes honest people. And through contact with my brothers and sisters and seeing their ability to open their hearts and talk about their experiences, I too slowly tried to open up and talk about my thoughts. I started to speak a little more. In January 2018, I was training to do text-based duties. Right at the start, when I saw my sisters had any problems in doing their duty, I was bold enough to directly point them out, and I was not very constrained when I spoke. However, as I spent more time in contact with them, I discovered that my sisters all had their strengths and all had some practical experiences. Especially Sister Chengxi. She expressed herself very clearly when discussing work or fellowshipping about her personal experiences. I felt envy in my heart. I felt that Chengxi was of good caliber, and compared to her, I was inferior in all regards. Later, when we were gathering or discussing work, I felt a bit constrained, and I did not dare to speak what was on my mind readily. I was afraid that I would not speak as well as others and be mocked as a result. One day in March, Chengxi said that I was talking a bit chaotically during my fellowship. I felt ashamed and extremely sad in my heart. Later on, when I went to gatherings to fellowship or express opinions, I would involuntarily think of Chengxi's criticism of me. I would feel like I was inarticulate, and I was afraid of saying something wrong and making a fool of myself. So I did not dare to state my own opinion readily. Because I did not express my own opinion, my partner sisters had to set down their work to inquire about my state. This hindered the progress of the work. One time, the supervisors were discussing work with us, and I had my opinions and suggestions. But then I thought, I'm inarticulate, and if I can express myself clearly, what will they think of me? The words reached the tip of my tongue, but I swallowed them down. When I heard that the opinions voiced by Chengxi were very similar to what I thought, I felt very sad at heart. Look at her. She is highly articulate and doesn't suffer from stage fright. Why am I so inarticulate? I can't even say what is on my mind. Later, I lived in a despondent state and delimited myself even more as being inarticulate, bad at talking, and of poor caliber. I also grumbled. Why had God not given me a silver tongue? while Chengxi's caliber was so good. Slowly, I talked less and less, and when gathering or discussing work, I would often be drowsy. I would not dare talk about any kind of state I had. Actually, when I saw that I was not fulfilling my duty and made my sisters attend to my feelings, I felt sad in my heart, but I didn't know how to get out of this state. Finally, I didn't even want to do text-based duties anymore. I felt so repressed and I was in agony. Because I was never able to turn my state around, I lost the Holy Spirit's work and my duty was reassigned. After my duty was reassigned, I felt extremely sad. I started to reflect on why I was so negative and passive in doing my duty. I read these words of God.
Almighty God says, all people have some incorrect states within them, like negativity, weakness, low spirits, and fragility, or they have base intents, or they are constantly troubled by their pride, selfish desires, and self-interest, or they think that they are of poor caliber, and they experience some negative states. It will be very hard for you to receive the work of the Holy Spirit if you always live in these states. If it is hard for you to receive the work of the Holy Spirit, then the positive elements within you will be few, and the negative elements will come out and disturb you. People always rely on their own will to suppress those negative states, but no matter how they suppress them, they cannot cast them off. The main reason for this is that people cannot thoroughly discern these negative things. They cannot see their essence clearly, and this makes it very hard for them to rebel against the flesh and Satan. Also, people always get stuck in these negative, declining, and degenerate states, and they do not pray to God, look to God, or seek the truth. Instead, they just drift along. As a result, they cannot receive the work of the Holy Spirit, and consequently, it is impossible for them to understand the truth. They cannot see any matter clearly, and they lack a path in everything they do.
By eating and drinking the words of God, I realized why I was negative. I believed that I couldn't fellowship as well as others, and so I delimited myself as being of poor caliber. I was also constantly hung up on how others saw me. This resulted in me not daring to voice my opinions. I would spend my days cowering, feeling repressed, with no way to feel liberated. When doing my duty, I couldn't gain the Holy Spirit's work. And I couldn't even give play to what I once had. This not only constrained my partner sisters, but also delayed the progress of our overall work. In reality, my caliber wasn't so bad to the point that I couldn't see any problems. As when I first started, I was able to do some work and voice a few opinions. But later on, once I saw that Chengxi was better than me, and she said that my fellowship was unclear, I started to constantly worry that she would look down on me. For fear of losing face, I didn't dare express my own opinions anymore. Because I was living in a negative state over such a long period, my spirit became dark and downcast, and my duties didn't yield any results, and so I had to be reassigned. I thought it over and realized that though I wasn't good with words, I should treat my deficiencies and shortcomings correctly and give full play to what I could do. As for the things I couldn't do, I should pray to God, rely on God, and absorb the strengths of my brothers and sisters to remedy my own weaknesses. Only by doing my duty in this way could I gain God's guidance. Moving forward, I turned my state around and put my heart into my duty. When I didn't understand things, I sought principles with my sisters and studied the relevant professional knowledge together. When I saw areas in which my sisters fellowshipped better than me, I tried to absorb these strengths of theirs to remedy my own deficiencies. Gradually, my state improved, and I started to gain some paths in my duty, which began to yield some results. In June 2021, I was made a leader in the church, and together with Brother Li Yang, we took on responsibility for the church's gospel work. Li Yang had been doing gospel duties for many years, was very good with words, and was a quick thinker. I felt a bit constrained working with him. One time, we were discussing how to preach the gospel to potential recipients. I had some ideas, but as I thought of how Li Yang had more experience than me in preaching the gospel, I was worried what he would think of me if I couldn't fellowship well, and so I held back. Then I realized that when communicating about work, both parties should express their opinions and complement each other. And so I said what I was thinking. But when I spoke, I was very nervous and didn't express myself clearly. Li Yang listened and then pointed out some of my deficiencies. At that time, I just wanted the ground to open up and swallow me. I thought to myself, I couldn't even talk clearly about the principles of preaching the gospel. What will my brothers and sisters think of me? It's so embarrassing. After that, when I came into contact with Li Yang again, it felt like my heart was being crushed by a pile of rocks. I felt so weighed down, and I started to rarely put forward my opinions and just sat on one side as an onlooker. Later, I came to notice that Li Yang relied on experience when preaching the gospel instead of seeking principles, and that he didn't accept other people's suggestions. This obstructed our gospel work, and I wanted to point this out to him. But then I thought to myself, Li Yang is so much more articulate than me. If he puts forward a different view and I'm not able to fellowship clearly, won't I just lose face even more? So I didn't expose his problems, leading to the progress of the gospel work being delayed. Later, I encountered many difficulties in my gospel work, and the work wasn't bearing any fruit. I felt extremely stressed, and then I thought about how inarticulate I was and how I found it hard to express myself clearly. This made me feel even more strongly that I couldn't do the duty of a leader well, and I even thought about resigning. My state got worse and worse until finally I was dismissed. After being dismissed, I felt extremely sad and reflected on myself. Why do I always feel constrained when I'm with articulate and quick-witted people? One day, during my devotional, I saw 2 passages of God's words in an experiential testimony video and felt really moved.
Almighty God says, "There are some people who have been slow-witted, inarticulate, and plain-looking since they were children. So others in their families and in society make some negative comments about them. For example, people would say, This kid is a numbskull. He's slow to react to things, and he's a clumsy speaker. Look at that person's child. Her sweet talk really charms people. When this kid meets people, he doesn't know what to say or how to make people happy. And when he does something wrong, he doesn't know how to explain or justify himself. This kid is an idiot. Their parents say this, and their relatives, friends, and teachers do too. This environment imperceptibly exerts a certain pressure on such individuals, causing them to unconsciously develop a certain kind of mindset. What kind of mindset? They feel that they are unattractive and no one likes the look of them, and that they don't get good grades in their studies and are slow to react. They always feel embarrassed to open their mouths and speak when they see others. And they are too embarrassed to say thank you when people give them things. They think to themselves, "Why am I such a clumsy speaker? Why are other people so silver-tongued? I'm just stupid." In this kind of environment, they go from, at first, feeling resistant in their hearts, to gradually accepting and acknowledging their own inadequacies and deficiencies. But at the same time, a negative emotion arises in the depths of their hearts. What is this emotion called? Inferiority. People who feel inferior only see their own shortcomings and not their strong points. They always feel that they are unattractive and unlikable, that their minds are not sharp and their reactions are slow, and that they are unable to read people. In short, they feel completely inadequate. This mindset of inferiority gradually comes to dominate within your heart, and it becomes an unshakable emotion that entangles your heart. After you have grown up and gone out into the world, or gotten married and established your career, regardless of your social identity and status, this emotion of inferiority that was planted in your upbringing since you were a child still affects and controls you, making you feel that you are worse than other people in every way. Even after you start believing in God and enter the church, you still think that you are inarticulate, have poor caliber and average looks, and cannot do any important duty. You think, "I'll just do what I can. I don't need to pursue being a leader. I don't need to pursue an understanding of profound truths. I'm just willing to be the least significant person, and others can treat me however they like." You were perhaps not born with this emotion of inferiority, but on another level, because your family environment and upbringing dealt you some blows or passed improper verdicts on you. This caused the emotion of inferiority to arise in you. When the emotion of inferiority becomes deeply rooted in the depths of your heart, it not only has a profound effect on you, but also dominates your views on people and things, and your self-conduct and actions. So, how do those who are dominated by the emotion of inferiority view people and things? They view everyone else as better than themselves, and they even view antichrists as better than themselves. They think that even though antichrists have evil dispositions and bad humanity, they are still people to emulate and role models to learn from. They even say to themselves, although they have a bad disposition and evil humanity, they are gifted and have better work capability than me. They can speak in front of so many people without blushing or their heart racing, expressing themselves with ease and assurance. They've really got guts. I don't have that kind of courage. What brought this on? It must be said that part of the reason is that your emotion of inferiority has affected your judgment of people's essences, as well as your perspective and standpoint when it comes to viewing other people. Is this not the case? So how does the emotion of inferiority affect how you conduct yourself? You say, "I was born a total fool, with no gifts or strengths, and I am slow to learn everything. Look at so-and-so. Although they sometimes cause disruptions and disturbances, and sometimes act arbitrarily and recklessly, at least they are gifted and have strengths. They are silver-tongued and they are well received wherever they go. But I'm no good. I'm inarticulate. No matter what happens, you first pass a verdict on yourself that you are no good and close yourself off. Whatever the issue is, you retreat and avoid taking the initiative, fearing you'll be asked to shoulder some work. I was born stupid. No matter where I go, people look down on me. I mustn't try to stand out. I mustn't show off what few professional skills I have. If someone recommends me for this work, that proves I'm all right. But if no one recommends me, I mustn't take the initiative to say I can take on this work. I can't casually say things I'm not confident about. What if I do a bad job? And if I got pruned, I'd be so ashamed. Wouldn't that be a terrible disgrace? I absolutely cannot be that kind of person. See, has it not affected how you conduct yourself? To a certain extent, your attitude is caused by the influence and control of the emotion of inferiority. It can be said that it is a consequence brought about by the emotion of inferiority.
God exposed that from childhood, some people are inarticulate and not as quick-witted as others, and receive unfavorable appraisals at home and in society. This causes the feeling of inferiority to arise in them. When I thought back to how, as a child, I did not like talking, was dull-witted, and had an introverted personality, with friends, relatives, teachers, classmates, and even my mother calling me inarticulate, I felt so inferior and constantly felt like I was a grade lower than others. Although after I started believing in God, by reading God's words, I was able to open up and talk about what was on my mind with my brothers and sisters. When I encountered someone as gifted, articulate, and quick-witted as Cheng-Shi, unconsciously I felt inferior. When discussing our work, I would not dare to express my opinion. And when gathering to fellowship about God's words, I would not dare to share my comprehension and understanding. When Liang and I were working together and jointly responsible for the gospel work, I saw that he did his duty with a corrupt disposition and hindered the gospel work, and knew that I should expose him. But I was worried that I would not be able to speak clearly. And if he put forward a different opinion and I was not able to refute him, I would lose face. So I watched the gospel work be hindered with open eyes, not daring to fellowship with Liang. Later, the gospel work encountered many difficulties, and I felt that because I was inarticulate and couldn't express myself clearly, I was incapable of doing the duty of a leader. I even thought about resigning and giving up. Living in feelings of inferiority, I was unable to do my duty normally and could not practice the truth. Not only did this cause a loss to my life, but my work did not bear fruit, and in the end, I was dismissed. If I carried on living in this state without turning it around, I would not be able to do any duty well and would end up being eliminated by God. When I understood this, I felt extremely sad. I did not want to carry on living in feelings of inferiority and had to treat my own deficiencies and shortcomings correctly. One time, I opened up to a sister about my state and difficulties. She found a passage of God's words for me.
Almighty God says, Antichrist's cherishment of their reputation and status goes beyond that of ordinary people and is something within their disposition essence. It is not a temporary interest or the transient effect of their surroundings. It is something within their life, their bones, and so it is their essence. This is to say that in everything Antichrists do, their first consideration is their own reputation and status, nothing else. For Antichrists, reputation and status are their life and the goal they pursue throughout their lives. In all they do, their first consideration is, what will happen to my status and to my reputation? Will doing this give me a good reputation? Will it elevate my status in people's minds? That is the first thing they think about, which is ample proof that they have the disposition and essence of Antichrists. And it's because of this that they consider things this way. It can be said that for Antichrists, reputation and status are not some additional requirement, much less things which are external to them that they could do without. They are part of the nature of Antichrists. They are in their bones, in their blood. They are innate to them. Antichrists are not indifferent toward whether they possess reputation and status. This is not their attitude. Then, what is their attitude? Reputation and status are intimately connected to their daily lives, to their daily state, to what they pursue on a daily basis.
After reading the words of God, I understood that just like an Antichrist, I had placed too much importance on reputation and status. From a young age, I had felt that I was inarticulate and not as good at talking as others. When I encountered articulate people while doing my duty, I felt very inferior. In particular, when my own deficiencies and shortcomings were exposed and I lost face, I would feel even more despondent and delimit myself as being of poor caliber, but would not seek the truth to resolve my problem. I only attended to saving face and did not do my duty well. I thought about how God had blessed me with the opportunity to train to be a leader in the church and arrange articulate, experienced brothers and sisters to work with me. God's intention was that I should absorb the strengths of others to compensate for my deficiencies and shortcomings. This was so beneficial for me in understanding the truth and improving my professional knowledge. However, I was not trying to seek the truth to do my duty well, but was solely focused on my image in other people's hearts. When I saw that I was not as good as others, I felt inferior and constrained, living in a negative state, not thinking to strive upward. When I saw Li Yang disrupt and disturb the work of the church, I didn't dare say anything and did not fulfill the responsibilities that I should have fulfilled. I was just like an antichrist, placing great weight on face and status, while not upholding the work of the church at all. Truly, I had not the slightest humanity. My 2 dismissals were the result of God's righteousness. Later, I read another 2 passages of God's words and realized that there was another reason for me living in a state of inferiority. That is, I was unable to distinguish between what good caliber is and what poor caliber is. I read these words of God.
Almighty God says, "How should a person's caliber be measured? It should be measured based on the degree to which they comprehend God's words and the truth. This is the most accurate approach. Some people are eloquent, sharp-minded, and especially skilled at dealing with people. But when they listen to sermons, they can never make sense of it, no matter how they try. And when they read God's words, they can't understand them. When they share their experiential testimony, it's always just words and doctrines. They come off as mere laymen, and others feel they have no spiritual understanding. These are people of poor caliber. Pursuing the truth is the most important thing, no matter from which perspective you view it. You can avoid the defects and deficiencies of humanity, but you can never evade the path of pursuing the truth. Regardless of how perfect or noble your humanity may be, or whether you may have fewer flaws and defects and possess more strengths than other people, this does not signify that you understand the truth, nor can it replace your pursuit of the truth. On the contrary, if you pursue the truth, understand a lot of the truth, and have an adequately deep and practical understanding of it, this will make up for many defects and problems in your humanity. For example, say that you are timid and introverted. You have a stutter, and you're not very well educated. That is, you have a lot of defects and inadequacies, but you have practical experience, and though you stutter when you talk, you can fellowship the truth clearly, and this fellowship edifies everybody when they hear it, resolves problems, enables people to emerge from negativity, and dispels their complaints and misunderstandings about God. See, though you stammer out your words, they can resolve problems. How important these words are. When laymen hear them, they say that you are an uneducated person, and you don't follow grammar rules when you speak, and sometimes the words you use aren't really fitting either. It may be that you use regional lingo or everyday language, and that your words lack the class and style of those of highly educated people who speak very eloquently. However, your fellowship contains the truth reality. It can resolve people's difficulties, and after people hear it, all the dark clouds around them disappear, and all their problems are solved. You see, isn't understanding the truth important?
From God's words, I understood that having good caliber doesn't mean that someone has a strength in a certain area. Neither is it the case that somebody who is articulate, quick-witted, and skilled at handling other people is of good caliber. These are just inherent qualities that people have. Genuinely having good caliber means that a person can comprehend God's words. A person with good caliber is able to comprehend the words of God and understand the truth principles. When they fellowship God's words, they can combine them with people's states and difficulties and point out a path of practice. Even though on the surface they may have some defects and their ability to express themselves may not be very good, they can still solve people's real problems and edify them. In the past, I always relied on my notions and imaginings to weigh things up. When I saw I was not good with words, I lived in a state of inferiority, delimited myself as being of poor caliber, and was constrained by face and status at every turn. I did not do the work that I was able to do, and in the end, I lost the Holy Spirit's work and was dismissed. I thought of some brothers and sisters. Although they are not good with words, they are able to rely on God and look up to Him when doing their duty. If they don't understand a problem, they are able to seek from and fellowship with others. And after a period of time, they show some improvement. From this, I saw that whether a person is good with words or not isn't important at all. The key thing is understanding and practicing the truth. I thought about how I was inarticulate and somewhat dull-witted. And when I saw people who were better with words than me, I got nervous and developed stage fright. However, I had some ability to comprehend the words of God and had some thoughts and ideas regarding problems in my duty. I could solve some problems. It was not at all the case that my caliber was so poor that I didn't have any thoughts or opinions of my own. However, as soon as I saw someone who was better with words than me, I lived in feelings of inferiority. I retreated into my shell when doing my duty and did not even dare to speak. I was not looking at people and things in accordance with God's words at all. I had to turn around my mistaken opinions and stop envying and esteeming those who are articulate talkers on the outside. In January 2024, I needed to teach Wang Ling, the leader of the gospel team, a computer technique. When I thought about how good Wang Ling was with words, my heart felt a bit nervous when I was teaching her. I thought about how to express myself so she would understand. But when I got to the most critical point, she said that she couldn't understand me. At this point, I felt a bit sad and felt that I was no good, so I silently prayed to God. I realized that I had again revealed a state of inferiority and felt constrained when I saw that Wang Li was better with words than I was. I thought of previously when I was always living in a state of inferiority and unable to do my duty normally, letting many opportunities to practice the truth slip away. This time, I could no longer act as before, always considering my own face and status. When I thought this way, my heart calmed down, and I asked Wang Ling what bits she couldn't understand and what difficulties she had in learning the technique. Through communicating with Wang Ling and patiently guiding her, she learned the skill in the end. We were both extremely happy. Now, I can do my duty normally without being constrained by feelings of inferiority. And in my heart, I am very thankful to God. After these experiences, I saw that in the face of problems, seeking the truth and understanding the truth is absolutely critical. Only by viewing people and things in accordance with God's words can we cast off negative emotions and live in liberation and freedom.